Welcome to Know the Rules of the Game podcast. What are her rules? I am your host, Desiree Patno, CEO and President of Women in the Housing Real Estate Ecosystem, NAWRB, and Desiree Patno Enterprises, DPE Real Estate Brokerage. I'm also the advisor and investor for Amicus Brain Innovations, Inc., and the Chief Strategic Officer for Zulu Time and publisher of NAWRB Magazine and the NAWRB Report. I am so honored today to have our guest, Charmane Sellers, President and CEO of ALEON Properties, Inc. Welcome, Charmane.
Hi, Desiree. Thank you for having me.
You're quite welcome, and we've got this going down. So let me talk a little bit about Charmane here. She is an honorable veteran of the United States Air Force, and she just celebrated her 11th year in the business. Fantastic. Thank you very much. Her company, API for short, provides renovation, remodel, and interior finish out construction services, which also includes training services, OSHA safety to both commercial and residential clients in both the public and private sectors. API has been providing construction services on projects at Texas A&M and San Antonio campus, Austin Community College, and Austin Independent School District, and several other places within the city of Austin. Furthermore, API is the only EPA accredited training provider in all of Austin. What a great accomplishment. Thank you, thank you. And we've trained close to 500 contractors in the EPA-led safe work practices. I know that was a very big deal with all the new contractors that were coming out. So thank you for that, because, you know, with all the childhood diseases and things like that. So welcome, welcome. She also has her science degree in psychology, her bachelor's of science, and master's degree in public administration and public policy. So important today, right? On dealing with the government, especially in today's world, with a focus on veteran services and housing, and then also affordable and senior housing, something very dear to my heart with the aging population. And also education and technology. We obviously have the technology base here at NAWRB for technology human balance that we trademarked. So thank you for that. She has over 20 years experience in community and public affairs professional, and she's used her skill set to build relationships with leaders in the private, public, and nonprofit sectors, which is so important in the nonprofit, because without them, our advocacy or our voices to be heard would not be there. So thank you for all that. So welcome. I hear a little birdie told me that you want to be a little bit of a cheerleader at one time. So could you tell me a little bit more of that?
Yes, in my early 20s, I got this wild idea that I actually could be an NBA cheerleader. So I went for tryouts, and I actually made it to the third round until it came time to do splits and backflips. And I knew that was my cue to exit that. Okay. So it was fun to try. And you know, when you're in your 20s, you think you're invincible and you can do everything. So at least I tried.
That's right. That's right. A for effort. So the fact is that you went back, at least you didn't injure anything without even warming and training up, right? Oh, yes.
Thank goodness.
As a former someone who was in it, was huge, right? It was really cool. So one of the things that you're a second generation entrepreneur, and that has really driven you to be a national spokeswoman, someone who has published so much and has really been out there. So getting so many awards. We met at Enterprising Women Leadership Council on Friday last week. And one of those things was so incredible is that when you came on the call and talked about your eyes, what it's like to be in this environment right now, to be a woman-owned business, and that in total environment, we were all just like, oh my gosh, we had no idea. We had never seen it from your shoes. We had not in your shoes. So we desperately said, okay, we're moving everyone. We're putting you on the podcast now. So thank you. And you just had dental surgery yesterday. So thank you for putting that
I'm
together.
toughing it through.
And when you don't know what we're toughing it through behind the scenes, we'll keep it that way. We're going to rip through this. So thank you. So,
thank you.
Yes. So you've received so many different awards across the nation, between your SBDC work and the Wharton School, to the University of Texas, to sponsoring so many women entrepreneur veteran programs. So let's set the stage on where we sit right now so we can dive right into the rules. We have the global health pandemic of COVID-19 for the past 3 months. We're just now starting to open up. We have the hoping to remove some of the stir craziness that I'm sure you've been feeling in Texas and here in California. But now we have so many curfews across the country. Here in Beverly Hills and some of the areas, they're 1 p.m. Commercial districts at 1 p.m. So as small businesses are trying to survive, turn the dial on how they can generate revenue. We heard about them starting to do work in the PPE. They started to do work and shifting what they normally would do, right? Some applied for an SBA PPP loan, or they did an EIDL loan, or while others are closing the doors permanently because they cannot survive through the dynamics. Even after winning, procuring contracts, whether it be federal, private, or public contracts, now more than ever, our effective leadership is important. Yet, as a recent widower, a Black woman, veteran, small business owner, so check, 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 check. You are knocking on the door of the aging population. You have the group has the highest fatality rate with COVID. You're coupled with the nation's riots as protesters are trying to have their voices heard. Black Lives Matter. So much disruption and uncertainty between the mental and the safety issues are all added to that bucket that we all sit in our champion, that I've been champion for decades. And now I'm like, whoa, we need to bring this out there. So I had the privilege, like I said, hearing you about that. And I said, I want to bring your rules, since we even changed the entire format of Know the Rules of the Game to not 4, but we have a question. Our very first question ever in all of 2020 podcasts is, what are her rules, your rules, right? So NAWRB's Diversity and Inclusion Leadership Council that I'm the chairwoman for formed about 4 months ago. We created 10 women leadership principles to help women in real estate and housing ecosystem, which you are, become more effective leaders, empower other women to reach their full potential. So today, Charmane, we're going to be talking about what about her rules, your rules, about the Know the Rules of the Game podcast. So let's go ahead and get right into it. You have been working so diligently the last couple of days on with clients with defacing buildings after each of the protests and dealing with your surgery and everything. It's been, I'm sure, overwhelming. So number 1 rule you came up with, to thine own self be true. Talk to me about that.
Yes. Well, I like to start by giving you a graphic in order to set the tone.
Absolutely.
Can you see this picture?
Oh, yes, look at that.
Little girl over there sleeping. That's me.
Okay.
8 years old. Out of a class of 24, there were only 4 Black children.
Wow.
That's been my foundation and my pattern through life, where I've been the minority from my education in my neighborhood. And so that to thine own self be true came from my mom. She taught me to be an avid reader. She loved Shakespeare. And she wanted me to get a better education. And so that's why she put me in those schools that ended up being predominantly white. But she wanted me to know that I could be more than what the society that I've born into, in the skin that I'm born in, this brown skin, that I could be more than what we're told that we can be, which at that time, a lot of times was service industry, providing, any kind of service, like maid services, cleaning, those types of things, secretarial. Exactly. And she wanted me to know that you can be more than that. And that's where that came from, and that stuck with me throughout my whole life, to set my own terms and know that I can achieve and be anything as long as I put my mind to it. And so that's what the first rule of to thine own self be true.
You know, it's so powerful because I really believe that your childhood has really grown and established you. I remember when we first met up in Monica's private penthouse, about the leaders got together and we were talking about how each of us came from a different career, different journey, different industry. And we were talking together and how our paths had really connected, but we had to get through our own struggles and tribulations to get there. And here we are, right, 5-6 years later, crossing paths again in the way of saying, how do we come and leverage each other's resources? How do we leverage each other's deep relationships, the same morals, the same care and wants and mission in life to help those around us and help those that we can play it forward in its bigger light, right? On behalf of women. But when we take it down to, you know, the things that are happening in this world, to where things have, it's like, you know, we talk about the women's, you know, right to get a business loan back in 1988, you know, when it was formed, and then the 100 years to be able to vote. We're still going through the oppression of things like that. Yet, you know, when you're talking about being black or brown skin and that whole dynamic, you're being put into this another place of constantly coming back, that it's kind of like it's never been left, right? It's never been equality of just being, I call it the it factor. How can we look at every person and no matter where, what, how, economic development, it's it. So there's no defining class, right? And now, you know, some of the things that were so profound when we talked about be true to yourself, or be true, you brought something up that was so powerful on the call that I would like to explore a little bit more. And that had to do with bidding on jobs, walking outside, being in the element. And it really hit home when we talked about, and this is last week, this was before, you know, we had days of social evolution or civil unrest, or, you know, are we causing this because of this? And the overpowering of the voices. We want to hear our voice. We want to see our voice, that things need to change. But when, you know, a small group comes and be destructive, we lose that focus. So how do we help your role on being be true, on being a small business owner, on being a mother, on being a veteran, on being all that training that you've gone through? How does that help you to amplify that first role?
Well, I tell you, that is a challenging but very important question, because with what I showed you from that picture, from me being in elementary school and all of that carrying through, it's hard to maintain your own identity, but also because you're operating in a society where you're considered the minority, to be able to still navigate through it successfully without being perceived as threatening, but also still being able to achieve the goals that everybody in America wants to achieve. Have a good education, for your family to be taken care of, to live in a thriving and bustling neighborhood, and to have a career, whether you go for employment or open your own business. And so the climate that we're in right now, it's challenging, because everything that has been done up to this point to fight for equality, from when our ancestors, I'll say me, African American ancestors, came here as slaves, through the Reconstruction, to Jim Crow, to civil rights, and now we're back to seeing things in the media again that starkly resemble the civil rights movement. It is a challenge to figure out how to have the to thine own self be true. Excuse me for
No,
stumbling.
that's okay. No,
So
you're doing great. Thank you
so
for trying. Go ahead.
you providing this type of platform is some of the solutions that can be taken to make sure that we keep making strides forward. And I say that again, keep making strides forward.
Forward, yes, no steps back.
Exactly, and progressive in addressing these issues that we're dealing with right now. Inequality in education, in access to finances. We're both in business. We know what that's like.
Right.
Access to quality housing in neighborhoods where public safety is key, but also where you have beautification and parks in your communities.
Right.
And so you, enterprising women, you're a remarkable organization, NAWRB, and what you're doing now. Those are some of the solutions to provide to a lot of women like me, and also men. But because we're women, I'll just stick with that. Other women, especially African American women,
right,
who are doing everything that we can to excel and thrive in an environment that truly was not intended for us to do that.
Well, I'd like to highlight one of the things that I didn't know about you that I just found out. And it brings us back to the Rodney King days, back in 1992. It's been 28 years. And lasted 6 full days of full-on writing, and here we are 7, 8, 9 days into this now. And you told me a story. We see groups, communities, people coming in that are not from the community and robbing the community, going to the haves and the have-nots, and disparity split. But you went to a Rodney King. Tell us a story about that. What happened?
Yes. Well, at the time, I was living in Atlanta, and, it was heightened tensions, everywhere. America was divided, strictly black and white. It was very divisive. And so everyone was watching, intently to see what the verdict was going to be. And when the verdict came out, the employer I was working with at the time said, hey, let everybody go home, because they started seeing what was happening in LA. They didn't know what was going to happen. And so I took public transportation then. They have a rapid transit system there in Atlanta, and I live downtown. So I took the train home, was walking to my apartment, and I saw a group of young Black individuals, male and female, surround this white woman. And they were very upset and hollering at her, yelling at her. And I ran over and jumped in between them. I was a buck 25, like with clothes soaking wet.
Right.
I was a real tiny person at the time. I just got in front of her, and I told them to leave her alone. She didn't have anything to do with that. She's not one of those policemen. She's not the people who let them free. Let her go. And I grabbed her. She was crying and trembling. I asked her, where was she going? I walked with her. They let us go. And I walked her to where she was going. And she said, thank you so much. And I just told her, I was hope that you would do the same for me. And it was just in my spirit. I didn't even think about my own safety at all. All I could think about was, first of all, I detest bullies. That's first and foremost. And I knew that they were angry. Because of what happened with him, but as was I, because I've had my own experiences where, now I'll get into that later, where, you want justice to come, and it doesn't, no matter how much proof you provide. But it doesn't mean that you misdirect your anger on someone else because of that, and because they're what you consider an easy target.
The human compassion, right? You were looking at as another human being that you knew that what benefit, good or bad, no matter what side of the fence you're on, you're like, you just felt like this was your duty to calling that, and this speaks to who you are as a person.
That's
It
right.
speaks to how your upbringing, that the reverse was happening. You had 4 out of 24 in elementary school, and here you had, let's say, a dozen compared to 1. You looked at that odds and say, wait a second, how did I feel? How did I integrate with that? And that, to me, spoke volumes, because we don't hear those stories. We don't hear that forefront to bring it to the thing. And that's one of the things that I asked you, last week. I said, I would love an article about the similarities, the dissimilarities, what we've learned, what we haven't learned between, from the civil rights to, the oppression for hundreds of years, the criminal justice system, not just about police brutality, because you still have judges, you've got prosecutors, you've got investigators, you've got, eyewitnesses, you've got technology. I mean, you've got so many different variables. When people say, well, it's police brutality, that's a component of it, because even in the jail system, it could be, there's so much you don't know, planted evidence, evidence removed, not allowed because of illegal search. I mean, we could go on. So I just, when we wrote a blog yesterday, it had to be about, in my opinion, about the criminal justice system, not just about the police brutality, because sometimes it can be just as deadly or fatal and in other ways, and just the fickle to go with it. So and I got my little girls that just came in and joined me, so hey girls. Got 3 of those, right?
Oh no.
If we move on to rule number 2, then be clear on the why. So let's talk about that, because that could go so many different directions. So your rules for the why.
Yes, for me, be clear on the why. Again, and you'll hear this throughout, because that's what's really ingrained in me. My mother used to tell me, Charmane, you need to know why you're doing what you're doing, because, and she meant that in my professional career, and now for me, it's in business. She said, because there are going to be times when things get very hard. There are going to be times when they're going to be very challenging. And if you don't know your why, you're going to give up. You're going to walk away.
True.
And so that's another tenet that's really stuck with me since I was a little girl. And it's really taken hold in starting my business. Because like we talked about before, being in construction and being a totally male-dominated industry, I had to keep the why in my line of sight, because otherwise I would have given up a long time ago. And for me, my why is because as you mentioned, I am a second generation entrepreneur. And I see the sacrifices that my grandparents made. They had a restaurant. I wasn't born at the time, but I saw the pictures. They had a restaurant back during the times when it was very volatile in the U.S. for any African American to own any business, even to go into some places of employment. And so their restaurant, they actually, I don't know, have you ever heard of the Chitlin Circuit?
Sounds familiar. I can't tell you a whole lot about it.
What it is African American entertainers would go throughout the United States, but they weren't allowed to eat or reside in any of the places where they performed. And so they would either have to stay in homes of people who would take them in the neighborhood, and if there was, and they would feed them there, or if someone had a restaurant like my grandparents, then that's where they could eat. And so because they lived on a Philadelphia suburban area, they got to take care of a lot of the very famous Black entertainers coming through. But excuse me, what I'm getting to is, because I saw the sacrifices that they made through the pictures and stories that were told, and then they also had a community grocery store in our area, and in the urban areas, like what they're talking about with the protests now, that people have come in and unfortunately have destroyed some of the only grocery stores that are in urban areas. And my grandparents had that, and we actually worked in it, so I know about that. And that legacy I wanted to carry forward, because when they passed away, then so did the business. But it stuck in me that in order for the legacy to continue forward, someone in our generation had to pick it up. And so I picked up that mantle. And so that's why a lot of the why is so important for me, and why it's so deeply ingrained in me. And that's why the company named ALEON is derived from my mother's name, Leona. I just took the A off the back and put it on the front. And that's my why. That's what keeps driving me. And that's what we pass on. My husband and I, God rest his soul. Before he passed, we passed on to our children, and we passed on to other members in our family, so that we can take pride in the work that we do. And hopefully the work that we do will leave some kind of lasting positive mark here in the world,
Absolutely.
and that really means a lot, Desiree, and you know me personally, that really drives me.
Well, you're setting a foundation. You're saying we've made our progress, so it's up to you to continue that progress and keep it going, because one of the things you talked about was the why. Something that had nothing to do with any kind of ethnic pressure, race, or anything. If you remember when the government shut down, was it in 2014, I think it was. We had
yes, when we were at the WIP convention.
Exactly, Women Impacting Public Policy. And we had the Democrats and the Republicans had a representative from both sides, and we sat there and listened for 3 weeks during the shutdown. And we heard woman business owner, or some kind of classification of business owner, whether it be hub zone, minority, women, veteran, disabled veteran, you name it, get up there, where there was a woman that I never will forget. She had a company that she had $7 million of credit out on her home and everything else that she owned to fund this government contract, get it done quick so she would earn the bonus, and then they didn't pay her because of the government shutdown. In the meantime, her competitor stole all of her 45 employees because she could not pay them payroll. Because she can pay them payroll, and the other company was offering her more money, they all skipped ship on her. So it's not just the economic development of saying that, we talk about the small businesses early in the podcast about not having the financial awareness to be sustainable and keep it going. But there are so many hurdles that we are all facing as a small business owner. So you are like checking 10 boxes now versus someone checking 4 boxes, and it gets lost, and we get grouped as a small business owner. They forget that we have all these different other layers. And you're dealing with, your children are grown, my children are grown adults, and we're talking about how, if you could imagine a small business owner running the household, because you're homeschooling and you're trying to get them, taken care of, getting their Zoom calls and not having this and that. And you're just like, okay, so now I'm running 3 jobs, 5 jobs, 6 jobs. No, thank you. We're not going there. So that why, to me, to you, is so important about your rules of the why. I'd like to understand that how, I think this plays into rule number 3, but we might go back to rule number 2. And rule number 3 is empower a team by informing them of how the impact company success include in their strategic plan. So talk about that, because if you think about, in my opinion, you're walking out to go bid on a job. Do you bid on that job because you made a story about how that you didn't want your husband driving late at night when you were working at Hurricane Harvey? Talk to me about that.
Yes. The part about Being fearful of him driving back, or the first part about
the rule? Both
power?
of them.
The
You take
rule?
a pick.
Okay.
You're the one with the
I'll
mouth.
go
You're
with
trying to. Yeah.
I'll go with the Hurricane Harvey part first, and then loop
Go for it.
back to the Rule 3. So what I shared with you on the call was that, and my husband, his name was Bobby, we did a lot of hurricane storm damage work throughout the history of the company. Hurricane Katrina, and recently, before he passed in September of 2018, Hurricane Harvey. And with everything that had been happening in the country, and it started for me back with not only Rodney King, but Amadou Diallo in New York, where he was shot they shot at him 41 times. And those cops, no one was charged. And then Abner Louima, another gentleman in New York, he also was beat severely to the point he had to go in the hospital and get surgery. And so those things were constantly, we're seeing those things. And so when he would drive back home from Houston, I would let him know, honey, please drive during the day, because I was so terrified, because in Texas, there are long stretches of road that don't have good lighting. And if he gets pulled over, I was just so afraid that he would be killed, for just any little short misinterpretation of his movements or his words or anything, and that's a heavy burden to carry, and still be expected to be a leader, be effective, be efficient, be strong, and but still have that fear like a cloud that's over you. I don't know if you remember in Charlie Brown Pigpen, where you just had that dust bowl around him all the time. That's what having that fear is like. It's like you're operating in life at that little pigpen dust of potential,
a cloud over your mind of not clear,
might
not
happen.
clear. Right.
Yes.
That's
and
a
so
heavy
to go
toll.
to the
Heavy toll.
It is. And so that could be a good segue of going back into the third rule, where we found out that when the principles that we use to start the company is what we wanted when we worked for other people. First of all, we wanted to treat the people with dignity and respect, and let them know that what they bring to the table is of value, and let them know how. Because we found that when we started implementing that type of model into the company, that we got buy-in from the team. And so they would go the extra mile on doing a lot of things, because they knew, we let them know, we actually got this contract because of the special skill set that you have. Or the client was so happy seeing that we had a low attrition rate, and they kept seeing the same faces over and over. And that contributed to us having repeat business. That really emboldened and made them feel proud and happy to know they're not only getting a paycheck, which is necessary, but they also knew that they were contributing to the company that they're working for. And so that's why we always say our team. Yeah, that's why we always say team. We don't say employees, because we're a team and we all work together. And involving them in the strategic plan, we got to find that oftentimes as business owners, we're so close up on something, sometimes it's hard to see what's around us. And so we found that our team members, when we brought them in, sometimes they would bring up ideas and we'd be like, it was right in front of us and we didn't see it, because we had all the responsibilities, as you know, as a leader, to have to wear all of the different hats at any given time. And so that's what we found to be, very helped us to be very successful. and found that it kept up the camaraderie, which is something really big that I learned in the military, and keeps the momentum going and the morale very high, you know. And like I said, more than anything, they always would go the extra mile for us. And they always said it's because they didn't have anyone treat them the way we did. They would even come back to us, Desiree, when we would work on jobs and let us know that larger companies were trying to hire them and pay them more money. And they told them no, because they knew that they had a consistency and longevity with us.
Right.
And we would work with them because we're very family oriented as well.
You treat them like your children. You treat them like they were partners. You treat them like they were extended. I heard an interesting fact that you could relate to. I did the Vanessa Montanage that I just did a podcast last week on, and hers is Never Stop Learning. She treats her tenants as their extended family. Extended family, not as someone that she's making money off of or a business and doesn't mix pleasure with business. It's purely extended family. So here in California, you don't have to pay. I'm not gonna say you don't have to pay, but they're allowing you to be late on your rent, and they attach it to 6 months to a year. And so here she is. She understood it. She worked with them because they're her family. That's powerful. And you have the same relationship with your employees by having your employees become part of the family. And what's so powerful is in the construction industry, you have day laborers, you have turnover, you have people always stealing other people. I mean, heard all the horror stories in New York where they would steal the cement trucks from one job to the next to overpay to get the job done quicker because overhead was so expensive in the day labor and stuff like that. I mean, in the labor of it going. So labor is so powerful. And commodities and supplies.
Yes.
And by you having a team that was consistent, it didn't matter what your price point was. They're like, okay, they're going to show up, they're going to be responsible, and they're going to do the job. Whether it's perfect or not, or you need to come back, we're human. Things happen. Job overruns, job realignments, job change orders, all good. And so that in itself, without you saying it, they saw it. And that is powerful. So one of the things that I believe that is so powerful that we have, that I'm thankful that is being brought out, is how much we have changed and how much we haven't changed. And whether you look at from the voice of race, whether you look at it from a gender standpoint, and whether you look at any economic, our disparity between the haves and the have-nots, between the races, between the cultures, between all the different classes that you could put on someone, we're driving our disruption to be so powerful. And the conference in 2018 that in Chicago we had, it was we're the disruptors, to be a disruptor. And now at the time, it was so powerful because we had that voice. We were, let us see, let us do, let us be part. Now, you would think twice about it and go, and in my opinion, yes, being a disruptor is good, but are you the disruptor with the voice of a protester? Are you the disruptor of the voice of being someone leading a charge that's going and cleaning someone out in another city, another place, in another store, right? I mean, here we're targeting hundreds of targets, targeting hundreds of CVS pharmacies, targeting, specific, why? Robbing an Amazon truck, because it filled the packages. I mean, so I think from my core is that if we go back to the 3 rules again, to thine own self be true, be clear on the why, and empower your team to be informed them on how to the impact company success and include them in strategic plan. You and yourself have created a culture, a relationship, and a win-all at the highest level and a win-all at the lowest level, that it continues to keep you to have your oscillation. Because at no time is a business
Yes,
always
yes.
going up. We all have bumps, and whether that's a health, a tragedy, a pandemic,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we got the pandemic, the civil, and at the
Yes.
same time, NASA's taken off.
Yeah.
You know,
Yes. SpaceX. Yes.
I mean, 9 years is the last time we had an American ship take off on American soil with American, and yet that was my whole life, growing up in the DoD contracting space and having, working with NASA, working on Point Mugu, Point Hueneme. My father was all into that stuff, and to go, I mean, what a fresh moment to have a break from the news being negative to being positive, right?
Yes.
And I think that's the why, the focus of the why, saying this is why we do this, because it's a integration of moving forward, and having the American astronaut actually up there under a Russian umbrella showcases, and having the three Americans together showcases that if there's a will, there's a way we can make this happen. And I would like to hit a couple things that we have down here for, you have a tip about asking for help is practical and integral to success.
Yes.
Sometimes in a moment, we need to have that be that hand reaching out, like you talked about, where you went and helped the white lady that was surrounded by the group on the Rodney King. So that was not an ask, but that was, it truly was harassed by, you could see it, that you got the vibe to go.
Yes.
Sometimes we need to be conscious of not just our inner self, but what's happening around us. And we need to listen. I'm a real big advocate that diversity, equity, and inclusion is not just, do we see the people, do we hear the people, but are we listening to the people? Are we listening to your conversation? Because I can see you and hear you, but if I'm not listening and acting on it, it means nothing in the content.
Correct.
So how can we help with what are her roles? What can we do to amplify your roles that have made you successful with your bumps and peaks and valleys, that we can make and hear more of you to help everyone out there? What are some things that you feel that are best practices that you could give me in a few minutes here that our listeners would love to hear? I mean, what is one of your, and I know we didn't go over this, but it's kind of like, what was a pivotal moment in your life that you knew you arrived with your construction company, or a moment that you knew that I've got this? What was that power strength?
There are a few.
Go for it.
But before we go there, I'd like to share with you that the SpaceX amazing launch over the weekend. Bobby actually was an intern with NASA and worked on classified projects when he was a teenager. And he was chosen because of his high scholastic achievements.
How fantastic.
And the irony is that one of the astronauts is named Bob. And every time they said his name and he was going up,
you got
chills. Filled up with pride, and I just thought of him, and he's now in the ultimate NASA, program, because he's in heaven now. But for that to happen, it just touched my heart in a very special way.
Yeah, that's a great story. That's what I mean. What are the odds of bringing up that and that, right? But that's that why. Yeah. Why is that we have this dialogue? Storytelling is an art, and storytelling is that I always believe in the deep, 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 and that's why one of the greatest things I can offer is I get people to open up that in a very weird way, say things that they would never have thought would have been, brought out because of stories like that, right? What are we doing? How are we doing it? Yes. So kudos, excellent. So what a way to incorporate them into this all, right? Other than the construction side. Yes. So if you think about that, go ahead.
But what you had mentioned about what could happen as
Yes.
far as, you know, being able to add more support to the why. Like I mentioned earlier, this platform that you've provided here, but also starting young, starting in our own families, sharing historic information about the family so that children know, especially in with the African American community, to know that our history is more than slavery.
Got it. Yes.
Because oftentimes, when that horrific and despicable part of history in this country is brought up, is there's like almost a like a shame or something, a connotation to it, and we're much more than that. And so that's one thing where it can start. And like with the demographic of what I showed you in my school pictures, at the majority population, it would have been very beneficial and could help now, to where it would attempt to find out who we were. They just plugged us in like little pegs in a hole, instead
Right.
of attempting to figure out how we have to navigate through a system that really is not set up for us to succeed as self-sufficient, independent, strong, powerful individuals and leaders. You know, sadly enough, the society that we were born into, and the skin, because of the skin we're born in, it was perceived that we would consistently be in a state of servitude. So being able to have those types of discussions early on, and having the access, which is what my mother shared with me, a lot of children, minority children, having access to information, to not just in libraries, but like my mom used to take me to museums and plays. The school that I went to had a had a international exchange program. Had I not, but the schools that my cousins went to, that were predominantly Black, did not have an exchange student program, you know. And so those are the type of things that are the resources that would be helpful to help improve and support the why, but also start breaking down and dismantling the bigotry and the racism and the inequities that we've experienced in this country, and really what's erupting and spilling out now, following the tragedy of Mr. George Floyd, of us seeing him being killed in front of us.
Well, no, a whole different, but you touched on something that's so powerful that I would love to see what's out there. And if you know, please put it in the article. But Katherine Johnson, I was looking it up, was the lady who did the Hidden Figures, that did the scientist who did the very first space shuttle, right? She was African American.
Yes.
She couldn't even use the bathroom, couldn't do this, couldn't do that. And she did it manually, not in a computer, and saved everyone's life. These are the stories that our children need to hear, of all sections, of all color, of everything. And if we showcase those stories, then the disconnect or the negativity or the foundation has to be solid. And if they can show, it's like the old adage we had for women: if you can see her, you can be her to be on a board, or you can be in a C-suite, or you can be a successful woman. If you can see a brown or Black person being a successful NASA developer, or being someone of a statute, and get it ingrained in the foundation, then you're setting up that saying, I have it. Now, granted, you have to have reinforcement. You have to have it continue, that you can't just be once and done and gone. But if you had it to where it was mandatory training and integration, I believe as a society that we would be much better, because it's the old adage and the old will that you can't erase memory, that once you get in there, it's really hard. Like the old, if we're going to take it back to real estate or commercial building, once you walk in, once you see it from the curb, you're not going to go inside. You've already blown the deal. Once you've seen something this particular way, you mentally say, I'm only going to pay $1 or $2 for it. I'm not going to give you your $5. So that has to be ingrained, that we judge everyone by the cover, which we're not supposed to. But that's human. Right. And if we mentally get that framework, I believe that we as a society and say, these are the leaders. And if we had a representation of each ethnicity and each gender of these are all successful people. See, they of all different types collectively, and made sure that we brought that to the table. I think that and in each of the different industries, and when a child said, how come we don't have more women in STEM? Or how come we don't have whatever? This is where your job is, to be that next person in that field. So you can go on the legacy to change it. Then you've created an opportunity to get the mindset while they're still forming. I like it. Correct. I love it. I love it. All right.
And it reverberates. It reverberates outside of your own culture to everyone around you, you know, and that's the beauty of it. But also that's the power of it. And that goes to what we're dealing with today.
That's right.
You know, and we're having this discussion, and the discussions are helpful, but then the next steps of action are what is necessary and needs to happen more consistently, except for every 25 or 50 years.
Right.
You know, and where it has to have something erupt or something be so traumatic and tragic to shake up everyone to say something's got to change. And that it have, you know, longevity, not something that, you know, it's just a flash in the pan.
It's a fad, a fashion fad.
Exactly.
Like bell bottoms, the discos, we're back. No, I was taking notes about highlighting the successful leaders of the different ethnicities to be in elementary school, to set that foundation, maybe even in kindergarten, right? To highlight just as a picture. And I challenge you and every listener on this podcast as it circulates worldwide, that if you know of a resource, if you know of a program that's actually doing it, we want to know about it. Because the idea is that we want to see what's existing. There's no point reinventing the wheel. We want to leverage up.
Correct.
So if there's something out there that has already highlighted you know, they took all the scientific studies where, you know, if you put a child in there that you don't delineate who and what it is, that they both want to go in STEM. And by the time they're in 3rd grade, they decided that they weren't good enough and they backed out. So, I mean, there's so many different studies that go through it. So I believe that forget the study, just do it. It's the right thing to do, you know, to showcase a thing. And so we can spend millions and hundreds of millions and billions of dollars saying, yeah, it is. Well, okay, you've lost 5 or 10 years of valuable time of the people of the children that we need to educate that this is not us. We're better than this. And there's a great saying that's out there. There's a few of us that are causing disruption, but most of us are fabulous citizens, right? All right, so I had to save your mouth. And thank you for the podcast and going through our technical difficulties we've had. How do we get a hold of you? How do we get a hold of you, and how do we utilize your services?
Well, ALEON Properties Inc. again is located in Austin, Texas. And our phone number is 512 area code 217-5555. And our website is the company's name, www.aleon, ALEON, then properties, plural.com. And that's how you can get in touch with us. And we welcome anybody to contact us. And I just want to share with you, Desiree, how much this truly means to my heart and to my spirit, to my soul, because, and excuse my language, I've been through hell since Bobby died. And it shattered my whole world, not just personally, but business. And to be able to carry on past that. And then seeing now, like you mentioned about the pandemic, how it's disproportionately affecting people in my culture. And now seeing the tragedy of Mr. Floyd and the unrest is happening, to be able to have this heartfelt, authentic, real conversation with you, and that you're genuine in making sure we get this information out to the world, it means everything to me.
I'm honored. I'm really honored, and thank you. I mean, this is not only the right thing to do, as I told my staff and I told so many people, you know, that I had asked you to do it. I mean, you know, I've been on the emails where people are asking to take care of certain cities, talking to the chief of polices of some of the biggest cities in the United States. And for me to, and I told them about this potential, and I said, she's going to have surgery, you know, for her mouth, and she's not sure if we could do it, but I'm praying that she, and here you are, right? Because that story needs to be heard. We need to collectively get this out in the masses, because the world needs truism, and authenticness can't be just talked about. It has to be actionable. And I believe by sharing the stories, highlighting the stories, showing that it's not all grandeur, that we have our bumps in the road, and that, you know, the stories that I've shared, you've shared with me about your struggles, the mental anguish when your husband died suddenly, the thought of carrying on, yet here you are in 2020, and it was 2018, and think of what he would have thought had you now, you know, our little success stories or little disruptions that mean so much to us, and now we're going, oh my gosh, you just went through a pandemic, you got this, and we're not done, we're just starting.
That's right.
And to continue our, you know, the coronavirus is going up, we're having second wave, we're supposed to have a plague, it's supposed to get crazy, and I believe that those who support each other, those in my heartness of why NAWRB was formed, was to collaborate, leverage, and integrate. And if we can't do that as a society, then the human race has got some serious issues. We see that every day. But the people that have the right groundness still need help. We all, I mean, I have my personal issues, you have your personal issues. Some days I'm up, some days I'm down. Instead of looking at us as, oh, she's got it, look at her, she, you know, does it. You have no idea what's happening behind my scenes or your scenes or anyone's scenes, because we all have struggles in life. And I believe that the art of storytelling, the art of getting the information out, and not be the same old, like D&I. I'm over D&I. You know, because it's been, it's like words. It has to be actionable, and it has to mean something, and it has to be deliverable and deliberate. And your why is a perfect why. So thank you. Go ahead.
And real quick too, Desiree, with the platform that you have and the different conferences that we're in, they're just very influential, powerful women. A majority of them are white women. And we need to make sure that whenever any type of inequities or degrading type of discussions or anything that take place, that bravery and courage come up within your own circles to say, hey, let's step back a minute and I don't condone that.
Right.
I don't
Agreed.
condone that language. I don't condone that mindset, because until that portion starts increasing, we're going to keep reliving the things that we're seeing play out on television today. It takes more than just the people within my culture, the people who are have been historically oppressed. It takes more than just us standing up, speaking out our voice. It takes the people also within the white community to say, we're no longer standing for this ourselves. And these are the actions that we're going to take and continue taking. And sometimes it even can cause division within families
Yes.
because of
Oh,
some of
trust
the
me.
things that, you know, you've
You
grown
know,
up with,
I totally,
you
well,
know,
it's
but
like,
those are important.
I totally concur. You know, it's like part of the movement for women. You need men to support women, and sometimes the men have to stand up to support the women. It's same idea. I remember
That's
reading an
it.
article, I can't remember, it was 2 or 3 days ago, where there was a whole bunch of protesters and there was a whole bunch of police officers, and one of the leaders of one of the chapters of Black Lives Matter gets up and says, you white women, use your privilege to get over here and stand between the police officers and the protesters to protect. And they didn't
Protect them, yes.
Exactly. They didn't even have to ask. They literally said that the women were more than happy. And they had hundreds of white women lined up shoulder to shoulder between the protesters, and they were completely what do you call it, friendly, you know, protesters. They were just peaceful protesters. And the police officers, and they're like, you know, stand tall, stand brave, stand together. And it was so cool to see, because you had a row of white, and the way she said it, you white women, you use your privilege. We need your privilege. And that's exactly what she's like, oh my God, my mouth. But that's what you're saying is that use more women. If you have the privilege, use it. If the woman doesn't have the privilege, use the man that has the privilege to the white that has the privilege. We all, it's called chain. I don't care how chain goes up and down, but if we all help each other, that's what this is about. This is fantastic. Thank you. So I want to thank again Charmane Sellers, the CEO and president of ALEON Properties Inc. in Austin, Texas. So for anything that you want to work on that has to do with residential or commercial, that has to do with natural disasters, she's your ticket. She checks all the little boxes for tier 2, tier 3. She does small, medium-sized construction. Very well versed, as you can tell, has her heart, has low turnover rate, which is a blessing in today's market, let me tell you.
Yes, yes it is.
Thank you. And then, so for us here at NAWRB, we have our podcast every Wednesday at 8 a.m. in the morning. What you can do to share, to leverage up, to make sure those resources out there. And we're going to be coming out with our 2020 Women in Housing Ecosystem Report, which has to deal with anything that touches land is the real estate ecosystem. So whether it's oceans on land, whether it's ponds on land, that whole dynamic, what's happened in Florida, Texas, and natural disasters. As a resource partner for the SBA, as one of the few women-owned businesses that are resource partner to be successful at access to capital, please reach out to us at NAWRB.com. And thank you again, Charmane, for taking your valuable time and your painful valuable time to be on our call. So I look forward to it, and please follow up and sign up for iTunes to have it every week and be in your inbox. So thank you. Have a great one.
Thanks, Desiree.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
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 Bye-bye.